cuties! I'm Miles Sexton, a content creator, activist, and loud and proud disruptor of the norm. On Our Private Bits, we talk about the things and people that don't get talked about enough, or at all. Trust me, as a sober, HIV-positive, non-binary person, I would know. Join me as I chat with people in my life and from around the world whose stories deserve to be heard. Maybe you'll learn something new, and you will definitely LOL. Our Private Bits is also part of the Acast Creator Network. All right, cuties. Today on Our Private Bits, we have Antonia Fifi joining us. She's an on-air fashion expert on CTV's The Good Stuff and an award-winning fashion and lifestyle content creator. Want to say hi, Antonia?
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad. Honestly, you have been someone that has I feel like we've been in the same room as each other a lot, but haven't had a good moment to chat and get to know each other. But I'm so drawn towards you and your fabulosity.
Likewise. The feeling is mutual.
And I just appreciate everything you're doing online. I think it's so important, I think, to fight stigma when it comes to age and just wearing what you want to wear. So yeah, I'm super excited.
And I echo that sentiment towards you in your space.
Thank you. Thank you.
100%.
So I guess just maybe where we can kind of start with this is can you tell me a little bit about how did you get into fashion? Where did this come from, for yourself?
Okay, so fashion for me, the truth is that I come from a family of artists.
Oh, cool.
Of which I never really considered myself. In the Caribbean, you kind of streamlined really early into the subject that you want to do. And I always had a math brain. So I went just really organically into business subjects and considered myself an academic.
Yes.
But my aunt and my sister and, both of my aunts actually on my dad's side are, artists, fine artists.
Okay.
And I suppose I realized now that fashion is and always has been my art.
100%.
When my parents, when I was really young, I was about 8 when my parents split.
Okay.
And eventually, my dad used to give my mom money. We lived with her most of the time. He used to give her money to take care of us and whatnot. And she gave it all to me in my hand by the time I was about 13.
Wow.
And I spent all of it on clothes.
Something I would do.
The whole lot of it. So when I think back now, I guess, I was always just drawn to it. And now I realize that there was probably an artistic vein that just was in my blood. And this is definitely my art form.
I love it. Were you when you were younger, were clothes something that was part of your self-expression or
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
What was your classic baby Antonia outfit? What was your go-to?
What's so funny is that I feel like I was never age appropriate. I remember one time I bought, I specifically remember this, and I must have been about 16 years old. And I bought this pencil skirt and this little spaghetti strap tank top. It was a set. It was black and it was embroidered and it looked really mature. You know what I mean? It was knee length.
Yeah.
And I was just always attracted to things that were different and that stood out. I think the truth is that I think that I wasn't the most confident kid, and fashion definitely was my means of raising the bar on my confidence, of standing out and expressing myself and feeling pretty.
Totally. I completely relate with that because it's I don't know, I was a very introverted person growing up, and fashion for me was it felt like an easier step. I was okay, I can wear this cool outfit because I don't know for my personality that I can be that bold as seeing other people around me. So I loved using fashion again as that way to make me feel more confident or give me some sort of sense of confidence,
Yeah, absolutely. The same. Yeah.
So what do you feel the most confident in now? What is your, what's your go-to?
Ooh, oh my gosh. I feel like I have such an eclectic style that can't really be defined. So for me, my watchwords, my fashion words, I think are bold, feminine, and boho.
Yes.
And I don't think that has to look like any one thing. It's just that the combination in every outfit will likely have some combination of those things. So if there's one thing, maybe it's statement earrings. I'm always in statement earrings.
I love it.
I really need to transition into necklaces because the earrings get lost in my hair. but yeah, maybe it's statement earrings. Or that's the piece. A lot of the time I feel like if I don't have earrings on, some sort of earring, I'm leaving the house. I'm a boy. I'm actually a boy. I'm not a girl anymore. So I need earrings to feel feminine, I think.
I like that.
But they do that for me. But there's no look per se. It's really just a vibe.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think it's true. It's like I love it that we can have these sort of like items in our wardrobe
Mm-hmm.
that are give us like that extra boost. Like, for me, it's like when
Mm-hmm.
I wear a heel, like
Yeah.
I feel so like powerful
Mm-hmm.
and tall and like,
Mm-hmm.
it just like
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
the way I hold my body is different. So
Yeah.
I guess it's
Sure.
similar with the earring too,
Yeah.
right? It's just
100%. Yeah.
those are items, and I think it's important for people to know that they can, like you can find these things, and these things aren't going to take like years of internal practice. That you can go out and maybe it's a lipstick or maybe it's like an eyeshadow color or whatever. Like
Yeah.
to encourage people to like find those sort of moments in their life that they're empowering themselves. So
Yeah. Yeah. I love that spin on it. That's
yeah.
beautiful.
I
Mm-hmm.
love it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
something that I just recently learned about you is that you immigrated to Canada. So I didn't know that about you
Oh,
prior to knowing. So what
yeah.
was that like immigrating, and how old were you when you came here?
Well, that's a long story. It didn't
Yes.
start recently because I did
Okay.
move back in 2018, but I came originally for boarding school
Okay.
actually when I was 16.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I came for boarding school. My sister was here prior.
And it was Toronto, right?
Yeah, in
Yeah.
Toronto.
Okay.
And I only had 1 year of boarding school, and then I went to U of T. So I
Yes.
was here originally as a student, as a
Yes.
business student. I
Okay.
went to U of T. I did commerce. Like I said, I was always sort of streamlined into business
Mhm.
subjects. And then when I graduated from U of T, I realized, because being in Toronto only
Yes.
heightened the love and also the ability to really explore fashion, because there was
Mhm.
an industry here that I thought,
Totally.
okay, wow, now I could actually make a living out of this. So
Yeah.
maybe I want to do this instead, something that wasn't necessarily available in the Caribbean.
Mhm.
And luckily, because my dad, at the time was the one who was funding my studies,
Yes.
I give him a lot of props for this, because I think that there are a lot of West Indian, Caribbean parents that
Mhm.
don't really see the value in art.
Yes.
And I very nervously said, I'd like to go back and do fashion design. I don't want to start working because I know I'm going to get into the business world and then it's going to feel like too much to give up to go back to school. So I want
Totally.
to go straight into this and I want to do fashion design.
I love
And he
it.
backed me, which blew my mind.
Ah,
But my sister probably paved the way because she was doing an art degree at the time.
okay.
So I did fashion design. And then I stayed on here and I worked as a fashion buyer for a couple of years
Oh, cool.
before moving back to the Caribbean.
Yeah,
So I
wow.
moved back in 2006, stayed there for 12 years.
Okay, no
Yeah,
way.
so I thought at the time that like this is permanent. I'm going back to the Caribbean. And
Yes.
it's so funny because I was 26 and at the time I felt like my parents are aging and oh my
Mhm.
God, what was I thinking? Like, they were good. They were in their, like my dad was in his 60s. He was good.
Yeah, it's fine.
But in any event, and then, my son was born in 2010 and he
Okay.
had some developmental differences.
Mm,
So that kind of changed things around, changed priorities.
okay.
And we came back in 2018 because I wanted to bring him here to a cognitive therapeutic school.
Okay.
That, Toronto, there are really not many of them, throughout the world, this specific type
Really? Okay.
of school. So I wanted to bring him here for that. And we figured, I could go back and forth, but the
Mhm.
whole family would come. So we all came. And it's interesting because it is an entirely different experience being here as a visa student
Yes.
that really is assigned a lot more respect.
Mhm.
Even in the application, for your visa,
Okay.
there is priority given to the visa students because of the
Really?
amount of money that they spend in the
Yeah, it's so
economy,
expensive.
right? Yeah, that now when you have to renew your applications, they're given priority as a
Wow.
permanent resident that I
Yeah.
am now,
Yes.
as an immigrant. It's a lot longer of a process to get your visa renewed again.
Wow.
So even that just shows, the respect that's given
Mhm.
under a visa student. And now today you're an immigrant. Like
Huh.
that's such a different experience. And even
Absolutely.
coming back and deciding that, no, not deciding that. Like I'm just getting
Yeah.
lost in thoughts
You're
right now because
good.
I'm like, there's so many things that I want to tell you.
I love it.
But yeah, so as an immigrant now, yeah, as coming back, now that you are starting from scratch. So I
Yes.
had 12 years of experience,
Mhm.
moving back to Trinidad, and I had opened my own stores. I had worked here as
Really?
a fashion buyer and opened my own stores when I got back. But I knew that 12 years was going to amount to very little
Mhm.
because the system here tells you that there's so much emphasis placed on Canadian experience.
Totally.
And therefore, you can come from anywhere in the world
Mhm.
and still come back here to work under someone that has really a fraction of the experience you have in
Yes.
any field,
It's
right?
so messed up.
It really is, because I think about the number of doctors and all of these
Yes.
people. Like, I've heard, doctors that have had to redo years of schooling
Mhm.
because there was no accreditation for what, there was no, thing given to what they had received in their own
Yeah.
country. And I understand the thought process, but
Yes.
really something needs to be done. Like, there needs to be a different system in place to allow these things to translate over, right?
100%.
Because I think that that's a big reason. For example, me in this space, there is some diversity
Yes.
in fact in the influencer world, in the media world, because
Mhm.
I get to work in both. I'm really excited about that. And there is some diversity when we look at, what we're looking like, but what we sound like,
Yes.
there's not so much. There are
Totally.
not a lot of immigrant voices,
Yes.
immigrant accents in the space.
Yes.
And I think that that's a big part of the reason. Because
Mhm.
by the time we get over here, we are not allowed to progress in the same way,
Mhm.
or to start back where we were, because of the way that things are in place here. And I think that's a big part of the reason of what my following resonates with.
Yeah.
Not only, okay, is she a mixed race woman, is she a Black mixed race
Mhm.
woman, and all of these things, but she's an immigrant.
Yes.
And our immigrant population, I think the last time I saw it on the television, because I don't keep up with these things, but I feel like
Yes.
it was 23%. It was some really incredible percent.
Yes.
And yet, certainly, that's not, the representation
No.
in our media space, because you were heard in our voices.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're so right. So how long did it take you total to like finally get your permanent residency for here in Canada?
Well, the application
Yeah.
actually for me to come over was
Yeah.
really quick. I
Okay.
was one of those that got it really quickly. But
Okay.
what I mean, when I was talking about like the renewal
Yes.
process.
Okay.
Once you're here, it lasts 5 years. You get your
Okay.
PR card in the last 5 years. And then you have to renew it every 5 years unless
Mm.
you've already applied for citizenship.
Okay.
And that process, I've seen people take 2 years to get their card
Oh my
renewed. And the
gosh.
crazy thing is in that 2 years, you can't travel.
No
Yeah,
way.
it's wild. Yeah, and
That's
and
that's
I and
awful.
coming from Trinidad, I felt like, oh
Yeah.
wow, I'm in Canada. This is gonna
Yes.
take like 2 weeks. Yeah, right. I
No.
think it took us a few months because we went through that. We've been here for 5 years already. But again, as a student, as a visa student, a lot of it was I felt, there's a certain respect that's not the same once you change that status to
Yes.
immigrant.
Totally.
Yeah,
That's
it's crazy.
it needs to change because I think there's
Mhm.
also like it's not just like the principal part of it. It's like also the psychological effects of it,
Of
right?
course.
Like I can't imagine what everyone in your family was
Absolutely.
going through. Like I dated someone who was from Costa Rica for a
Mhm.
while, and like
Mhm.
it was the same thing. I think he was waiting for over 3 years to try to get his permanent residency here, and like
Mhm.
and it's like it's such an emotional sort of journey going on that because like you just don't know and you don't hear anything and you're
Yeah.
just like waiting to get that letter or that email or whatever, just to like find out if you've like been approved and like I don't know. How
No,
did you cope with that?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing for us is that the approval came really quickly. It came
Yes.
within 4 months.
Okay.
When I applied for it in Trinidad,
Yes.
and again, the Canadian system places a lot of emphasis on
Mhm.
your Canadian experience. And
Yes.
luckily for us, I had gone to school in Canada.
Yeah.
I had all of these things. And
Totally.
therefore, I got through really easily. But
Yes.
my sister, for example,
Yeah.
has been in those types of situations. She was in the US, but where, like you were saying, like this status of being on a visa is
Yeah.
something that's plays such an emotional toll
Totally.
because your life is consistently in the hands of someone else.
Yes.
Yeah?
It's so
Mm.
true, and it's I mean,
Yeah,
they should
it's
be
tough.
paying for our therapy, therapy
Yeah, yeah.
afterwards because it's like, oh, I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah,
how
that's
people
another
go
thing
through
the
it.
Canadian system needs to do, include therapy into that,
Into
into
our
OHIP.
healthcare system.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Hello. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm paying like a down payment on a house to go to therapy. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
ridiculous.
Absolutely, it's wild. Yeah, I mean, that's another, but
I know.
that's for another time.
I feel you. I feel you. Now, all of that aside, I guess like what were like some of the things that I maybe you noticed that were like different about Canada? So I know you said like you had a fashion industry in
Mhm.
comparison to the Caribbean, but was there anything else that like you that really like stood out to you about like
Well
living in Canada? Yeah.
well, again, I get this beautiful, I'm in this beautiful position where I can compare it to when I came here at
Mhm.
16, left for 12 years,
Yes.
and then I came back in
Yeah.
2018. And in 2018, what I loved is that I felt like in Toronto, because I have to speak to Toronto, you can't feel like an outsider.
Mhm.
I love that.
Yes.
Everywhere that I walk, there are accents that
Yes.
are not necessarily mine, but
Totally.
we're all speaking in a different accent.
Yeah.
And I love that. I could
Same.
not feel like an outsider. And I remember one day I was actually at sitting in a restaurant with my
Mhm.
kids, and these two guys were sitting together and they were holding hands. They were obviously a
Yeah.
couple and
Yeah.
holding hands. That
Yeah.
so beautiful. I love that. I love that my kids are growing up
Yes.
in a society where that is on display so that they're
Totally.
going to see that as normal.
Yes.
The other thing is that my daughter's teacher a couple
Mhm.
years ago is a transgender man.
I love
I
it.
love
Ah,
that.
that's so
Again, like
cool.
there's no way to teach acceptance, like
Yes.
being exposed to it.
Yes.
There's nothing that's going to
Oh my
replace
gosh, I
that.
couldn't agree more with you.
When that's the norm, the way that I see my kids thinking now, I'm
Mhm.
so glad that they've spent this 5 years here
Yeah.
because I can see that it has affected the way that they think,
Mhm.
what is normal to them, and it's beautiful.
Oh,
It's
I
like,
love that. Do you feel that like I guess like in the Caribbean, like it's still obviously like it's not as progressive in that
yeah,
way when
it
it comes.
absolutely. I mean, we're not, like I'm definitely not one that will ever say that I came for a better life. Like,
Yes.
there's this,
Totally.
there's this
Yeah.
narrative that we all
Yeah.
leave because the grass is so much greener
Yeah. I
over
mean that's
here.
bullshit. But
Yeah,
like, yeah.
right, yeah. So I don't preach that, but absolutely, we have to call it as it is. And we're
Mhm.
certainly not. I mean, I think that Toronto
Yes.
is quite ahead of a lot of the world. You know what I
Totally.
mean?
Yeah.
So not the Caribbean in isolation.
Yes.
So they definitely would not have been exposed to that. This
Yeah.
is something that is certainly, been a benefit of this move.
Absolutely. And,
Yeah.
and honestly, like I felt the same way. Like when I moved to Toronto, I'm from a super small rural town
Mhm.
and like the east coast of
Absolutely.
Canada, and it
Yeah.
was like the same thing. I was like, I remember coming here and like trying all the different foods and seeing
Yeah.
people from different countries and like going to
Yeah.
the different neighborhoods that are dedicated to those different parts of the world. And I was like, this
Yeah,
is
it's beautiful.
amazing, because I was only ever around white people in my town. Like I remember there was like
Mhm.
one family that was from China and that was like it in my town. And like I
Yeah.
never got to see any other walk of life. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I that's something I would never take back. And I love about Toronto. It's such a like cool, like melting pot of all of these different sort of cultures all coming together. And
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't teach that,
No, you really
Yeah.
can't. And
Yeah.
I love that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Now,
Mhm.
where did like I guess like was there a moment for you in your sort of fashion journey now that you're, you've been working in fashion and for so many years of your life
Mhm.
that you were like, I'm no longer going to allow like sort of age and these like societal sort
Mhm.
of like pressures or stigmas like define what I wear. Cause I think you're very
Yeah.
like you're
Oh,
very bold with your fashion and I love it. It
yeah,
makes me so
thank you.
happy.
The thing is that I get asked this question a lot in
Yeah.
like in different forms.
Okay.
And I always feel like I'm the wrong person to ask this question to because I think this is just natural for me. I don't think there was ever a point where it
Hmm.
switched.
Yes.
And I think that has a lot to do with the way that I was raised because
Yeah.
I never saw my parents. Age was never a barrier to
Hmm.
anything. And
Yeah.
therefore, that translated to me across the board into fashion,
Yes.
into achieving my goals, into all those types of things. And I will say, though, that now that my parents are in their 60s and, my dad is in his 80s,
Yeah.
does love a younger woman.
Yeah. Ooh.
that now I hear some little snippets that suggest how age is going to slow them down,
Mhm.
right? And I'm aware, so therefore that's probably something, this is a frame of mind that I might
Yes.
take with me into that age group,
Yeah.
but certainly not in their 40s and 50s. This was
No.
not something that they thought of. And therefore I don't think I'm an example of, okay, this is how we own it and this is how we're going to do
Mhm.
it and this is what I did to achieve it. This is just a part of me. I'm not an example of that. I'm an example of she did it, so I can do it too.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think people can be inspired. 'Cause I think sometimes people need that, like, that person to, like, give them that little spark or that little bit of hope or that confidence, to go and, like, be like, "Okay, I'm giving myself permission to
Yes, sure.
start, like, owning that." But do you think that, like I guess, like, obviously, I never grew up in the Caribbean, but
Mm,
do you think that there's, like, a difference
mm.
between our cultures of, like, how we view age? Do you think that that would maybe
Oh,
have something to do with it? Like
for sure.
yeah?
For sure. And we definitely, I mean, I think that, at least 3 times a day,
Yes.
I get followers saying, yes, because the Caribbean lifestyle keeps you young.
Yes.
So clearly it's something that we believe in ourselves. We have a carnival culture. We have a culture, like almost a bit of a party culture, really,
Totally.
that carnival culture. And we don't stop really into our 60s engaging in that type of activity. You know what I mean?
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, they may not be on the streets parading, but a lot of us are actually. And we're definitely, we have parties specific for that age group. There's no like partying is for teens, So certainly that's part of it. And the dress code that goes along with that.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah, it allows you, I think that maybe even when I was in my 20s, I still had the mindset of, oh, what's that lady doing in the party and why is she wearing that?
Yeah.
I'm sure at that time, but all the 40 and 50-year-olds.
Yeah, they're in the full regalia.
Oh,
like
100%. You know what I mean? Yeah, we have permission. You have full permission to do as you please.
I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
And it needs to change. I think it's like, it's so interesting because like, with Canada, being so connected to like, the colonization coming from, from England and France. And it's like, I think that those sort of like those societal like standards that like, especially like the royal monarchy, like have created of like, a woman of this age should, never show like this, and it's like all of these sort of rules. And it's like, I don't know. I like it's something that I find for myself anyway. It's like I'm, even as a a non-binary queer person, it's like I'm still having to unlearn a lot of these sort of things, or just like the way that I'm like thinking about people. Because sometimes I'll look at someone like wearing something, and I'm like, oh my god, like they shouldn't wear that, and I'm like, wait, why am I even like saying that inside of my head?
No, but
like,
it's interesting that you say that because you say even as a non-binary queer person, but that's not something that you chose. That's who you are.
Yes.
This is something that you were taught.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So those are two entirely different things.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's like, it's something that I'm, not only myself, but other people I'm trying to like challenge, I think the way that we're create
programmed.
Thoughts, right?
Yeah.
I
absolutely.
think there's a lot of unlearning that we have to do.
Yeah, across the board. A lot of us indoctrinated into how we should behave.
Totally.
And for sure, we don't get the messaging from young that we should be ourselves.
Yes.
There are a lot of ways that we should behave, and very rarely is that just like you, Yeah.
So true. So true. So like, so you have how many kids do you have?
I have two.
Two. Okay. So what do your kids think about like all of your fashion? Like now, I mean, like, I'm curious about this.
Yeah. Well, my daughter's 15.
Yes.
So she's at the age of homeless dressing.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Like homelessness. So
it's so true.
So every time I ask her, I was like, what do you think of this? She's like, oh, it looks great. I was like, you like it? You can always borrow it. She's like, oh, it looks great for you, Mom.
Yeah.
It looks great for you. So she's not there yet, but I'm fairly confident that I just need to give her a few years, and I'm gonna hold on to my stuff and give her a few years, and she's gonna be into it. But she's definitely they support me.
That's good.
They're really supportive.
Yes.
But yeah, they're not quite feeling it. They think I'm loud. They think I'm pretty loud.
Totally.
Yeah.
But it's funny how it's like the opposites too, though. Like I find like, I don't know. It's like me and even my other siblings. Like I feel like I'm definitely like the boldest one of the group.
Right.
And like my other siblings are very like,
Same with me and my siblings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think, and I might have that effect on them.
Yes.
They're like, okay, I have this mother that is so loud.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be in all neutrals for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
That might happen.
I love it. So I'm a bit curious too, though, is like, I know you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier about like not, I guess, like hearing representation in the voices, but like, I guess like, what has it been like, I guess, like navigating sort of this world of not only just fashion, but working in TV media as, like as a woman of color, like, have you felt like there has been like a lot of barriers that you've had to face and like, yeah, I'm just curious about like your own personal view.
Yeah,
on this.
sure. And again, like I feel like this, as you know,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like this is a really a personal experience.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
so I don't speak for the mass
Totally.
at all. And I think that my experience has been really welcoming.
I love
I believe, in all of our success,
Mhm.
there's a part of that is hard work, and there's a part of that is luck.
Yes.
And I assign, and thank my blessings for the part of that was
Mhm.
luck, because part of it was me showing up on social media and deciding that I'm going to be confident enough to do this.
Yes.
And then part of it was, a producer just happened to come across my content and invite me into the studio, because that's how I got on to television over here.
Really?
They reached out to me
That's so
from
cool.
TikTok.
Oh,
yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, wild, right? So I've been really lucky in that space. And I think that I'm talented.
Yes.
I think that there are a lot of talented people at the same time, you know what I mean? That don't get those experiences. So I really try to balance the two. Also, to keep yourself. I think that the only way for me, I think, to continue to be successful is to stay humble and grounded.
Totally.
Otherwise, you kind of lose track of how you got here in the first place, and you start to go off course. So I can't say that I've had bad experiences. They've really all been really incredible, working with great teams. I've never felt, I hear it. The truth is that there are always whispers that you are the representation that they need to have, and they have chosen you because you are going to serve as a number. And I hear that all the time. And of course it affects the way that I view, I think for a minute, to be honest, for a moment, I think, okay, like I'm evaluating faces that day, but it never comes through. Like, I really authentically feel appreciated.
Totally. And I think, like, for both of us, working in television, and in fashion, it's like, yes, okay, maybe we are checking off a box,
Sure.
But I also think that we're given an opportunity to also, like, create change, and, like, we can use our influence and our power and our reputation that we're creating in this industry, I think, to, like, open more doors for other people. And it's like, okay, yes, like, maybe, who knows? Maybe it's not, maybe it is that, maybe it's not that. But I still think that, like, I have the power to, like, bring in more people, and, like, who are the models that I'm using for my segment? Who are the designers that I'm featuring? And it's like,
absolutely.
so I think it's like, a lot of people are like, oh, you're only there because of this. And I'm like, no. Like, maybe I am, but, like, I'm trying to use the most of what I can do while I'm there.
Absolutely. Which is, a big reason that I speak in my Trinidadian accent. I feel like that is so important. Again, for all the reasons I said about not only being a Black mixed race woman, but being an immigrant and being really clear of how proud I am to be an immigrant in this country.
I love that you, honestly, because it's like, and just having this conversation with you, I've never actually thought, it's like, I think about the physical, like, representation, but not like the vocal representation of it. And I think it is so important, because it's like, how many people do you meet that are just, like, speaking, what Canadian English is? Like, we all have such a variety of accents, or, like, a mix, so it's like, yeah, I think that's also, it's something that's like, it's making me, like, be like, okay, how can I, like, incorporate more of this into, like, the work that I'm doing?
No, it's been such a beautiful experience, because I feel now, particularly as my page has grown so rapidly this year,
it's amazing.
that every time I walk out onto the streets, other Canadian immigrants stop me every single day. And I recognize the responsibility that I have to continue to represent in this way and to be proud in this space as my authentic self. I'll use one of the catchphrases here just because we all relate it, you know? And it feels, that's the most beautiful part of the job.
Yeah, no, you're so right. Like, I'm reading right now, this is, like, sort of related, but I'm reading Sir Patrick Stewart's, like, his biography, and he's talking about, like, even, he's from England, but when he first started acting, and, like, he was taught by a voice coach how he had to speak English, and he had to remove the accent that he had where he grew up. And he had, like, a very, like, I forget where he was from, but it's like, I think it's like, no, like, I think, again, it's like another piece of, like, embracing and celebrating people's cultures, and, like, that should not be something that someone wants to get rid of. It's like,
no,
and we should be supporting that even more, so
absolutely. And and you say that, and it kind of just made me think of something that my mom is Venezuelan, actually. She's not Trinidadian, she's Venezuelan, and she came to Trinidad when she was 15. And back in those days, and even today, I think she felt discriminated against as a Venezuelan in Trinidad. And therefore, she tried to remove her language, to remove her accent. she didn't even really want to pass Spanish on to us, a lot of it. And I see her now, excuse me, I see her now being really proud of how proud I am of my Latin roots. Like, I love that I have this, all this mix, like, I'm so proud of it. But she's surprised by that because that's not something that she felt.
Yes.
And that's been important to me. When my kids came as well, naturally, of course, they came at 8 and 10, so they're going to lose their accent.
Yes.
But they also made an effort to do so. My daughter in particular made an effort to do so. And I understand that. Again, you want to be included. You're in a new school. You're 10 years old. You don't want to be the odd kid out.
Yeah.
So very quickly, she started speaking in a Canadian accent. And I, did not discourage her from that either.
Yeah.
It's going to happen over the course of time in any event. But all of those things speak to wanting to be included. And I have in this space, realized that the easiest way for me to have gotten overlooked would be to blend in.
Yeah, exactly.
Had I blended in, would you have stopped scrolling on that TikTok?
Totally.
Probably not.
No.
If I had a Canadian accent, would I stand out from the other curly-haired, girls that you were watching doing fashion videos? Probably not.
No.
So the easiest way, really, I say this, to my kids, the easiest way to get overlooked is to blend in.
Yeah.
So be you and do you.
Exactly. I'm all about, those little things that, sometimes we might think that we need to change about ourselves are really our superpower,
Oh, 100%.
And it's like, I think the moment we reclaim our power and start embracing those parts of ourselves, do we actually, I think, find the most truest version of who we're supposed to be, and the joy that comes with it. So,
and then things become so easy.
Agreed.
It becomes so easy. You felt that.
Yeah, you stop spending so much time in your head, thinking about it,
On my page, in my social media, now that I feel relaxed enough to be me, this is a great job. Like, I love this job.
Totally.
I could not say this last year because it was constantly trying to think about how to create and what to create and who to show up as.
Totally.
Right now, oh my gosh, I just relax in it and now I'm having fun with it. I enjoy my job. I love waking up in the morning to create content, an entirely different experience when you relax into yourself.
I love it. I love to hear it. Now, I'm curious too, was there a particular video that was your first sort of viral moment where you really felt like your social media started blowing up?
Yeah, there were two that made me realize, I think what it did, it made me realize what my following wanted out of me.
Okay.
And one of them it was around Carnival time this year. And I did a video on some on different songs, on soca songs, right? And I can't even remember the video was exactly, but I did a few of them after that. And it was just how well do you know your music kind of thing, and different soca songs. So that was my ode to it's Carnival and I'm Trinidadian in this space, so I want to do that. And immediately there were so many shares of this that I realized, oh wow, you guys really want me to put us on display, to be a proud Trinidadian, to really get into the root of who I am.
Yes.
And then, so it was around the same time, because in February of this year, I did a campaign for Black History Month.
Okay.
And, I got to choose which business I wanted to promote, because I was promoting businesses, different Black businesses. And I did one on a Caribbean restaurant.
Love it.
And this was an ad, you know what I mean? And you know what engagement is like for ads. You don't expect to get I think every single Caribbean person that follows me in Toronto shared that ad.
Oh my God, that's so nice.
Again, and all of a sudden I realized, okay, wow, it is not enough for me to be another Black face. You know what I mean? Again, the representation matters.
Yes.
Seeing ourselves in someone in media, on social, that matters. But I realized you want me to go one step further, and you want me to highlight our community and to highlight our culture. And I leaned into that.
I love it. Because I think it's to your point, so many of these conversations that I have on this podcast, with different people of color, it's a lot of their upbringing has been so much of trying to make them, more American or more white or more Canadian. And it's been so much of this erasure of their culture. And it's I love that we're sort of in this moment where so many of these amazing cultures are finally getting, I think, their moment to be celebrated in a way that's not being stigmatized, and not being degraded. And I think it's so beautiful, and it makes me so excited.
Not being stigmatized, absolutely, exactly. And the beautiful thing is, I was having this conversation with a friend recently, and he assumed that so much of my following would be from all over the Caribbean. But the thing is that, the minute, again, because from the next step after realizing, and it started to progress, is that I started speaking to camera. I started speaking in my accent. So now you're so aware that I am a Caribbean person. Or at least, if you're not familiar with the accent, you're hinting in your mind, you figure, oh, okay, she's from somewhere else. And I started, really showing up as speaking in slang, speaking in, terms that we use in the Caribbean, that type of thing. And so therefore, he assumed that so much of my following would therefore be other Caribbean people.
Yeah.
Not the case, right? That we are so drawn, like we kind of discount how much we are interested in, like this is a different world, we are so drawn to our differences.
Totally.
We are so drawn to the beauty of Caribbean culture. That's why I tell Caribbean people to stand up and own your Caribbeanness, because the rest of the world loves us.
100%.
100%. And to really claim that. So that has shown, this my following now, and it also shows that we all appreciate art, and therefore when you're scrolling, the art of fashion appeals to everyone.
It absolutely does.
And so the combination of the culture and the art together, now I have a following that is so diverse of Caribbean people, of all of the really places in the world that are kind of fashion hubs. I have like Australians, and UK would be, the ones at the bottom, obviously a very large Canadian following.
Yeah.
But I love to see that now, that the mix is all creeds and races that can appreciate those two when you merge them together.
Totally. I totally feel you. Like my following is so like, it's like Mexico and Brazil and like, I have a lot in Europe too. And I'm like, this is such an interesting sort of like mix of people that are like just drawn to you on social media. And
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating, and love that, we're able to sort of create these sort of communities online, of bringing these people together. That's like a safe space,
Yeah,
So,
no, 100%. Yeah.
Well, my love, thank you so much for coming on this podcast with me. I'm so glad that we could chat.
Yeah,
you were such a gem. It's like infectious hearing you talk about everything, but I just adore you and can't wait to continue watching you just continue to bloom, because this is just the beginning, I think, for you. So.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I just want to say one last thing, because I feel like people listening need to hear this too, is that, one of the things I was nervous about was my voice. Like I've grown up always feeling like my voice was boyish. I had so many experiences where people mistook it if they didn't see me for a guy, and so many things, and that was one of the things that held me back as well.
Yes.
And now, the most common comment I get, entirely unprovoked, is that I love your voice. It's so soothing. It's so sexy. I just got one of those comments on my way over here.
I love it. It's
so
true.
Again, just another reason to just lean into yourself and to who you are. And you will soon recognize that those are your strengths.
I couldn't agree more.